let's not make this too long. Yokoso washitare. Welcome again. Got another story for you. Actually, today is a 2-for-1. This story is from scroll number 24 of the Konjaku Monogatari Shu. It's the first story in that collection. That's the Konjaku Monogatari Shu is the collection that I've been translating. But this story number 1 is actually a 2-for-1. It's got 2 of them in there, and they're both really short, you'll probably notice. But today's stories deal with ghosts. Well, okay, not really ghosts. More like supernatural beings. Like we're getting into some... Cryptid's not the right term. Ghosts isn't the right term. But specifically we're dealing with tenin, is what they're called. Tenin, which if anybody knows kanji, the ten means heaven and nin means person or human. So basically we're dealing with almost angelic type good supernatural beings. But you'll see when we get there. So, once upon a time, there was a man who was known as the Kitabe no Sadaijin, which means the minister of the left of the northern fringes. Now his actual name was Makoto, and he was the son of a fairly famous emperor known as Emperor Saga. And the reason why he was known as the minister of the left of the northern fringes or the northern perimeter was because he lived on the avenue called Ichijo, which is the avenue that was closest to the imperial palace, which in the layout of ancient Japanese and ancient Chinese, because they got it from China, the palace was supposed to be in the center of the city at the northernmost part. And so the road of Ichijo was actually the road that was closest to the palace, and therefore one of the most northern streets. So, and because he lived up really far north, they called him the minister of the left of the northern fringes. That's how I'm going to translate it. Now, this man was a very accomplished individual. I mean, being minister of the left, he was already really high-ranking in government and whatnot, but he was also very, very skilled in all sorts of things. In particular, he was really, really skilled at playing stringed instruments, specifically the kotto. And if you don't know what a kotto is, I might be able to put a picture up here, somewhere around here so you can see. But it's kind of like a big, long instrument that you lay on the ground, and it's got these huge strings, and you pluck the strings kind of like think like a massive guitar that you lay down, and with these huge strings, and you pluck it. If you hear a kotto, you will know what it sounds like. It's got a very distinct East Asian sound to it. It's really beautiful. I think they're fantastic instruments. But one day, this minister was hanging out at home, and he was doing his normal thing, and he was playing a kotto, just plucking away at the strings, enjoying life. There's probably a nice breeze. There's probably a nice, beautiful scenery at his fancy mansion that he was living at. Things were going swell. And he's just, as experts do, like if you've ever seen an expert with a guitar and who really knows what they're doing, they'll just make stuff up. They'll just play. Sometimes they'll play songs that they really like. Sometimes they'll just go into syncopation or whatever it is, where it's just improvising. But he was just jamming away at a kotto. And then he got the idea that he wanted to try a particularly difficult piece. Something like Through the Fire and Flames by Dragon Force, or something, legendary, something or other, Devil Went Down to Georgia kind of a thing. But he's just going away at this, just shredding. Actually, I don't know how much he was shredding, but he was playing this really, really technical, really difficult piece. And he himself started thinking, man, I'm doing a really good job at this. Because he was playing it like crazy. The other thing was he was by himself. There was no audience for this. He was just playing it and going crazy. But while he's in this zen flow state of just absolutely killing it on the koto, he gets done playing and he looks up. And out in the distance, there was another building called a hanachi-ide. And over in this hanachi-ide, he noticed a glow. Because he had been playing deep into the night. Like he had gotten so absorbed in his playing that it had become night and he didn't even really realize. You know how people get, you're just really into some kind of a sport or some kind of an activity that you really like, you get engrossed in it, and then, wouldn't you know it, sun's gone, it's 10 p.m., probably should go to bed, but you're not going to. But anyways, after playing this particularly difficult piece, he looks over and he sees this light glowing in the darkness over by the hanachi-ide. And of course, he starts thinking, what? That doesn't look like a torch. Why is there a light over there? And so of course he looks in a little bit closer, and as he's looking, he notices what looks like 2 or 3 people that are about a foot tall, dancing and glowing with this light. The text doesn't say that they were laughing or making any noise, just that these little foot tall people were glowing and dancing. But there's a good chance that they were making noise or something. Imagine like fairies, kind of, sort of. And Makoto, the minister of the left, realizes that these are tenin. Like I was saying, they're tenin. They're supernatural beings from heaven. They're heavenly beings, almost angelic in a sense. Angelic, but in a Buddhist, East Asian, Japanese sort of way. So this guy sees this and instantly starts thinking, bro, it must be because I was killing it on the kotto so good, so well. I was killing it so well that these tenin decided to come down and listen to little old me play. And so, I mean, if you ever need any proof that you're really good at what you do, supernatural, heavenly beings coming down to partake of your musical performance, that's next level, bro. That's next level. And of course, he thought this was all strange. This wasn't something that happened every day. This was a supernatural event. Ooh. But it ended up making its way into these stories. So that's story number 1. Story number 2 is about a man by the name of Haseo, which is really weird how you write his name because you write it with, I would have pronounced his name Nagatani O, but apparently you pronounce it Haseo. I don't know why. But he was the middle counselor. So he wasn't like a super high-ranking official, but he was pretty up there. But the notable thing about this guy is that he was a professor. He was a hakase, is what they call him in the story, which today hakase translates as professor. But back in the day, it just meant like a really accomplished, notable scholar type. And he wasn't just any scholar. He was one of the premier scholars in the realm. He was super, super educated and super, super smart. But one night, one bright, full moon lit night, I don't know how to be fancy about it, but on a night with a brilliant, one night on a, why can't I say words? It's just words. How is this hard? One night, while the moon was out shining brilliantly, fully, this Haseo was heading home from wherever he was going. Story doesn't actually mention it. But he was passing by the Daigakuryo, which was the dormitories for the students, for the college attenders. But again, it wasn't college in the same way that we think of now. It was kind of similar to it. Just know that a lot of these words that I'm translating don't fit neatly into English. So please take everything I say with at least a grain of salt, if not a few more. But he was passing by the Daigakuryo, right? Passing by the dorms for the college kids. And he was coming out of the west gate and he started crossing a bridge. And he decided to look over from the bridge to the Suzakumon, which was the main gate into the Imperial Palace. Which, if you listen to one of the previous videos about the Sumo Narimura, you kind of have an idea that the Daigakuryo is relatively close to the Suzaku Gate, which the Suzaku Gate is, again, the main gate into the Imperial grounds. But the thing about the Suzaku Gate is, being a Japanese-styled gate, you had the gate itself, and then at the top of the gate, you had what was basically an entire floor for people to walk around on, to people stand watch on. And, you know, it's like a building, you know, it's pretty high. People have to be able to move freely. And hopefully I've got a picture right around here if I can edit things properly. But as you can see, there is a second story, essentially, on the gate. But this Haseo looks over at the Suzaku Gate at night, and he sees a person standing on the second story, on the second floor. The thing is, though, is this person was wearing the headdress of a nobleman and some really nice, but like business casual is how I would translate it, some really nice robes that nobility would wear. But the most distinct thing is, this person was so tall that his head went all the way up to the rafters of this second story. Now again, to put this into perspective, you know, this is a gate, and the second story people have to be able to walk around without them hitting their heads on the rafters. So you can imagine, it's basically like this guy was so tall, his head was in the ceiling, pretty much. He's a super tall dude. I don't know exactly the height, but it was clear that this thing was really, really big. Gigantic. And he was humming songs from China, because the ancient Japanese were super into Chinese culture at the time too. But this being, this super tall being, was humming music from China, songs from China, and he was reciting Chinese poetry. So Haseo, of course, sees this and has to do a double take like, whoa, this is insane. And he actually doesn't call this being a tenin, he calls it a ryonin or a reinin. I'm not entirely sure which is the correct pronunciation, but it means a spirit person. So again, it's kind of like a ghost. It's a supernatural being, somebody who doesn't normally walk amongst us. He's not an alien. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe someday we'll get into the tale of the bamboo cutter and Princess Kaguya and talk about how aliens might have been a thing in ancient Japan. Please calm down. Don't get overexcited. But anyway, Haseo sees this and of course is just blown away. Wow. I can't believe that I got to experience and witness something so profound and supernatural. And of course, it is very unnatural, surprising thing to see things like this. And thus is it said that among the people who lived in the olden days, that there were many who were witness to such strange and interesting, I don't know if that's the best word to describe it, such strange phenomena. Okay, so those are the stories. Again, very simple, very short. But I do also want to discuss a little bit about some cultural context, if you will. So, one of the things that Japan is very famous for is its yokai. And I believe in the Edo period, there was a book or an official document of some sort that described all of these yokai. Whatever this was, it was written in the Edo period, which is like 250, 300 year span of Japanese history, as opposed to the entire period of written Japanese history, which goes back much further than that. And people change. Just because the people in Edo Japan had some cultural similarities to the people in Heian Japan, which is where all of this is taking place, they were not the same people. They had different cultures. They had different experiences. People change. People move. People are not static things. And so just because there was a book of yokai in the Edo period does not mean that those yokai were ever even conceived of in 600, 700 years before that. So, when we're talking about supernatural creatures and beings and phenomenon in ancient Japan, just know that a lot of these things aren't particularly well defined. What is a tenin? Honestly, I don't know. The only other time I've seen a tenin appear in ancient Japanese literature is in the tale of Princess Kaguya. And those tenin seem to be about the same size and shape and everything as humans, but they glow and are superhuman and have superpowers and whatever. But tenin tend to be really, really good. They're benevolent spirits, usually of a Buddhist sort. Like, they're not evil. And that's the other thing is ghosts aren't always bad. Imagine hearing those stories, ghost stories that we have in modern America / the rest of the Western world. But imagine that, but with good things, and clearly good things. Little beings that glow and dance in delight at the sound of an expert playing his musical instruments. So just as you're hearing these stories, keep an open mind, because what you may first think of when you hear some of these words is likely not how the people who lived 1,000 years ago halfway across the world imagined things to be, because they lived in a very, very different world from us. All right, well, that is going to do it for now. Thank you for watching. Please do the usual YouTube shenanigans like share, subscribe, share to all your weeb friends. If you have any questions about the story, where to find it, or some of the wording, please let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to explain myself on things that I may have gotten wrong or didn't fully explain. But thank you very much for listening. Ito katejike no koso haberikere, and we'll see you in the next one. Later.